If someone ever wanted Dominic Hale dead, they wouldn't come for him first. They would come for her. From the top floor of his Manhattan penthouse. Dominic watched the city he ruled with silence, money, and fear. Deals were signed because he allowed them. Wars ended because he said so. Nothing in his world moved without his consent until tonight. His phone vibrated once. A photo. Lena Carter, his assistant, seated in a private restaurant he used for confidential meetings, smiling, relaxed. Across from her sat a man Dominic had never seen before. The glass in his hand cracked. Not from anger, from the sudden, terrifying realization that the woman he refused to love had become the most dangerous weakness he'd ever had. Dominic Hale never arrived early, in his world. Punctuality was a luxury for people who waited. Power belonged to those who were waited for. That night, however, he stepped out of the elevator 5 minutes ahead of schedule. The Meridian was exactly as he remembered it. Soft amber lights, discreet partitions, and an atmosphere designed to swallow secrets whole. It was the kind of restaurant where no one asked questions, where names were exchanged in murmurs and deals were sealed with a glance instead of a signature. Dominic owned half the silence in this place, and the other half respected him enough to stay quiet. 2 men in dark suits remained by the entrance as he walked in alone. His stride was calm, measured, controlled, until it wasn't. 10 steps inside, something shifted, not in the room, but in him. Dominic stopped. It was subtle, the way his body reacted, a tightening in his chest, a fraction of a second where his breathing changed before his mind could catch up. His gaze lifted instinctively, scanning the room the way it always did, cataloging threats, exits, faces. And then he saw her. Lena Carter sat at a small table near the window. For a moment, his brain refused to process the image, as if it were an error, a misplaced detail that didn't belong in this carefully curated space. Lena was supposed to be home, or with friends, or anywhere but here. She wasn't alone. The man across from her leaned forward slightly, elbows resting casually on the table. He smiled as Lena spoke, listening, not waiting for his turn, but genuinely listening. When she laughed, soft and unguarded, he laughed with her, not politely, not out of courtesy, but because he meant it. Dominic felt something sharp twist low in his chest. Lena rarely laughed like that at work. In the office, she was composed, efficient, always 1 step ahead. Her smiles there were professional, controlled small expressions designed to keep things smooth, never personal. This smile was different. Her hair was loose tonight, falling naturally over her shoulders instead of pulled back into the neat style Dominic was used to seeing. She wore a simple dress, nothing flashy, but it fit her perfectly, catching the warm light when she moved. She leaned forward slightly as she spoke, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture so unconscious it felt intimate to witness. Dominic hadn't realized he'd stopped breathing until his lungs burned. Who is this guy? The thought struck harder than it should have. He stood there, frozen, watching as the man reached across the table and lightly touched Lena's hand. It wasn't possessive. It wasn't aggressive. That made it worse. Dominic's jaw tightened. A waiter approached him, unaware of the silent storm unfolding behind his steady posture. "Good evening, sir. Table for 1. Dominic didn't answer. His eyes remained locked on Lena. On the way, she didn't pull her hand away immediately. The waiter followed his gaze and stiffened slightly, recognition flashing across his face. "Oh, I see. She arrived earlier with don't," Dominic said quietly. The word was calm, soft, but it landed with enough weight that the waiter straightened instantly. "Of course, sir. My apologies." Dominic finally shifted his gaze away, the movement feeling strangely physical, as though he were tearing something loose from his chest. "A table," he said, "with a clear view." He didn't know why he said it. He only knew he needed to see. The waiter led him to a table 2 spaces away from Lena's, close enough to observe without intruding, far enough to remain unseen. Dominic sat down but didn't touch the menu. Food was irrelevant. All he could see was the way Lena's posture softened as the man spoke, the way she tilted her head, eyes bright, engaged in a version of herself Dominic rarely glimpsed. She looked free. The man laughed again, louder this time, and Dominic felt a muscle twitch near his eye. "Boss," a familiar voice murmured. Ryan Cole slipped into the seat across from him, tablet in hand, his expression neutral but alert. "Our contact is running late. Should be here in 15?" Dominic didn't respond. Ryan followed his line of sight and paused. He said carefully. "Your assistant." Dominic's fingers curled slightly against the edge of the table. "Yes." Ryan hesitated. "Looks like a date." The word settled between them, heavy and unwelcome. Dominic watched as the man stood, perhaps to take a call, perhaps to excuse himself briefly. Lena glanced down at the table, picking up her glass, unaware of the way Dominic's entire focus sharpened. The moment the man stepped away, Dominic stood. "Boss," Ryan warned under his breath. Dominic was already moving. Lena was reading the menu when she sensed the shift in the air, the instinctive awareness she'd developed after 2 years of working beside a man whose presence bent rooms around him. She looked up. Her hand faltered. The glass nearly slipped from her fingers. "Dominic." Her voice wavered, just slightly. "What are you doing here?" He stopped beside her table, close enough that she could smell his cologne clean, understated, unmistakably him. His expression was composed, his posture relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, unreadable. "Enjoying your evening?" he asked. Lena swallowed. This is my night off." "So it is." His gaze flicked briefly to the empty chair across from her. "And this?" She straightened, a flicker of defiance sparking beneath her surprise. "Dinner?" "Dinner," he repeated, as if tasting the word. "With whom?" "That's not your concern." Something darkened in his eyes. Before he could reply, the man returned, stopping short when he saw Dominic standing there. Confusion crossed his face, followed by cautious understanding. "Oh," he said awkwardly. "You must be Dominic. Lena mentioned you." Dominic didn't extend his hand. "I don't recall that," Dominic said calmly. Lena's cheeks warmed. "Dominic, please." "This dinner is over," he said, not raising his voice. "No," Lena replied firmly. "Standing? It's not." The man glanced between them, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I don't want any trouble." "Then you should leave," Dominic said quietly. Lena's patience snapped. "You don't get to decide that." Her voice carried controlled, but edged with something raw. It drew a few curious glances from nearby tables. Dominic held her gaze, something fierce and unfamiliar swirling behind his composure. "Everything you do reflects on me," he said. Lena stared at him, disbelief flashing across her face. "My work reflects on you," she corrected. "My life does not." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Lena reached for her purse. "I'm staying," she said, her tone final. "You don't control this." She turned back toward the table, toward the life she'd been trying to keep separate. Dominic stood there, chest tight, watching as she sat down again, as if something fundamental had slipped through his fingers. He didn't say another word. He turned and walked out. Outside. The night air hit him hard, sharp and cold. Ryan followed a few steps behind, careful not to speak until they reached the car. "Do you want me to look into the guy?" Ryan asked. Dominic paused before getting in, glancing back at the restaurant window. Through the glass, he could see Lena laughing again, though it seemed quieter now, less unguarded. "Yes," Dominic said finally, his voice controlled but strained beneath the surface. "Find out who he is." He slid into the back seat, staring straight ahead as the car pulled away. For the first time in years, Dominic Hale felt something he didn't have a plan for, and it unsettled him far more than any enemy ever had. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel to enjoy many more heart-stirring stories every week. The city did not sleep that night. From the back seat of the car, Dominic watched New York blur past in streaks of light and shadow, his reflection faint against the tinted glass. The driver said nothing. Ryan said nothing. Everyone had learned, long ago, that silence was safest when Dominic Hale's thoughts turned inward. Yet for all the movement around him, Dominic felt strangely still. Lena's voice echoed in his mind. "My work reflects on you. My life does not." It wasn't the words themselves that unsettled him. It was the way she had said them, steady, unwavering, as if she had already decided something important and was daring him to argue. He rarely lost control in public, never over something as trivial as a woman's dinner plans. And yet, when he closed his eyes, all he could see was Lena across that table, smiling at another man like the world hadn't taught her to be careful yet. Dominic exhaled slowly. This wasn't jealousy. He told himself that firmly. Jealousy was irrational, emotional, weak. This was strategy, risk assessment. Lena Carter existed too close to him to be careless. She moved through his buildings, rode in his cars, heard fragments of conversations she wasn't meant to understand. She was visible, and visibility, in his world, was dangerous. Still, the tightness in his chest refused to ease. The next morning, Lena stood on the sidewalk outside the Hale Group Tower longer than usual. The building rose above her in steel and glass, familiar yet oddly intimidating in the early light. For nearly 2 years, she had walked through those doors with confidence, her role clearly defined. Today, that certainty wavered. She adjusted the strap of her bag and took a breath. It had been just dinner. She reminded herself of that as she crossed the lobby. Just one evening where she allowed herself to exist as Lena, not Dominic Hale's assistant. And yet, the way he had looked at her cold, sharp, almost wounded, lingered in her thoughts. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened on the top floor, the space was quiet, too quiet. Dominic was always early. His presence usually filled the hallway before she even reached her desk. Today, his office door was closed. Lena sat down, turned on her computer, and tried to focus. Emails came in, calls were returned, schedules were adjusted. Everything appeared normal on the surface. It was the silence that unsettled her. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, footsteps echoed down the hallway slow, deliberate. Lena looked up just as Dominic stepped into view. He wore a dark suit, collar open, no tie. His expression was unreadable, carved into the calm mask he showed the world. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Something flickered there. Recognition, tension, a memory of warm lights and raised voices. Then it vanished. "Good morning. Mr. Hale," Lena said quietly. He walked past her without responding. The office door closed behind him with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. Lena stared at the door, her fingers tightening around her pen. So this was how he planned to handle it. Dominic sat behind his desk, staring at nothing. Ryan stood near the window, tablet in hand, waiting. "You want the preliminary report on last night's contact?" "In a minute," Dominic said. Ryan hesitated. "And the other matter." Dominic's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What did you find?" "Name's Noah Bennett. 33, marketing consultant, clean record, no known ties to anyone we watch. Normal." The word tasted bitter. Dominic leaned back in his chair. "Is he still in the city?" "Yes. Keep an eye on him." Ryan nodded, and Lena Dominic's gaze snapped up. What about her? Ryan chose his words carefully. She noticed. Of course she did. Dominic waved a hand dismissively. "She'll be fine." Ryan said nothing, but his silence carried a question Dominic refused to answer. Lena didn't last the entire day pretending nothing was wrong. By mid-afternoon, her patience thinned to something brittle. She gathered her courage, stood, and walked to Dominic's door. She knocked once. "Come in," his voice called, flat and distant. The office felt colder than usual. Dominic stood by the window, hands in his pockets, his back to her. The city stretched endlessly beyond the glass, indifferent and vast. "You wanted to see me?" she asked. He turned slowly, studying her with a gaze that felt measured, professional. "Sit?" She did, straightening her shoulders. "Tell me about last night," Dominic said. Her heart skipped. "Last night was my personal time, I'm aware." "Then why does it matter?" He crossed the room and leaned against the edge of his desk. "Because you were seen." Lena frowned. "Seen by whom?" "By people who pay attention." She inhaled sharply. "So this is about optics. It's about safety." She let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "You don't get to disguise control as concern." Dominic's eyes darkened. "You think I don't care about your safety? I think you care about losing control," she replied, meeting his gaze. "And I think that scares you more than anything else." Silence settled between them. Finally, Dominic spoke, his voice lower. "You don't understand the consequences of being close to me." "Then explain them," Lena said. "Don't shut me out and expect me to fill in the blanks with fear." He studied her for a long moment, something conflicted crossing his features. Then he turned away. "You're dismissed," he said quietly. Lena stood, disappointment and anger twisting together in her chest. "You don't get to pull me close and then pretend I don't exist." His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't turn back. She left without another word. That evening, Lena walked home alone. The city hummed around her cars passing, voices blending into background noise. She replayed the conversation in her head, frustration building with every step. She almost missed it at first, the feeling of being watched. It was subtle, a shift in awareness, footsteps that slowed when she slowed, paused when she paused. Her heart began to race. Lena quickened her pace. The footsteps followed. She reached for her phone, fingers trembling slightly. Just as she turned the corner, a hand touched her arm. Miss Carter. She gasped and spun around. A tall man in a dark jacket stood before her, an earpiece visible against his neck. She recognized the crest immediately. "Hale Security?" "I'm sorry," he said calmly. "I didn't mean to frighten you. Mr. Hale asked me to keep an eye on you tonight." Relief and irritation washed over her in equal measure. "Why?" "Because someone followed you from the building earlier." Her breath caught. "Who?" "We lost him," the guard admitted. "But he backed off when he realized you weren't alone." Lena's pulse pounded, a chill settling beneath her skin. Dominic knew this. "Yes, ma'am. And he didn't tell me he didn't want you to worry." Lena let out a shaky breath. She didn't go home. Instead, she turned back toward the office. The top floor lights were still on when she arrived. Without knocking, she pushed open Dominic's door. He looked up sharply. "Lena, why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. His gaze swept over her, assessing. "Were you hurt?" "No." "Touched?" "No." He exhaled, tension easing slightly. "Then you're fine. That's not the point," she snapped. "You don't get to decide what I should or shouldn't know." His voice hardened. "You were followed. And you shut me out," she shot back. "Again?" Dominic's composure cracked. "I was trying to protect you." "By lying." He stared at her, frustration and fear warring in his eyes. "By keeping you out of it." She softened. "Just a fraction. You can't protect me by pretending I don't exist." Silence fell. Finally, Dominic spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "People don't survive long in my world if they become distractions." Lena's chest tightened. "Is that what I am to you?" He looked away. "I would rather you hate me," he said quietly, "than watch you get hurt because of me." Something inside her shifted. Lena stepped closer. "You don't get to choose fear over honesty and call it love." His head snapped up. "Love?" The word hung between them, dangerous and undeniable. Neither of them spoke again. Outside, the city continued on, unaware that two lives once carefully separated had begun to collide in ways neither could control. And neither of them knew that the distance Dominic tried so hard to create had already come too late. The city felt different after that night. Lena noticed it in small, unsettling ways, the way the lobby guard looked at her a second too long before nodding. The black sedan that appeared on her street more often than coincidence allowed. The quiet wait that followed her steps like a second shadow. Dominic had not said anything more after she stormed out of his office, but his presence was everywhere. It was in the extra security badge waiting on her desk the next morning, in the discreet escort that appeared whenever she worked late, in the silence he wrapped around himself whenever she entered the room. He was protecting her. He was also pushing her away. Lena hated that the two felt inseparable. She sat at her desk, scrolling through emails she had already read twice, her thoughts drifting despite herself to the man behind the closed office door. Dominic Hale had always been difficult to read, but now he was a wall cold, immovable, deliberate. She refused to be managed like a liability. At exactly 11:45, she stood, smoothed her skirt, and walked to his door. This time, she didn't knock. Dominic looked up from his desk, surprise flickering briefly across his face before his mask slid back into place. "You're early. I'm on time," she replied. "You're avoiding me." His gaze sharpened. "Sit down. Lena." "No." The word came out calm, steady, more confident than she felt. Dominic leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You don't get to walk into my office and make demands. I'm not making demands," she said. "I'm drawing a line." That caught his attention. She stepped closer, stopping just short of his desk. "You don't get to decide when I deserve information. You don't get to protect me by turning me into a child who needs supervision." His jaw tightened. "You were followed. And I handled it," she shot back. "I didn't panic. I didn't freeze. I came back here and confronted you." His eyes darkened with something unreadable. "That's exactly what worries me." Lena let out a soft laugh, not amused. "You don't trust me. I don't trust the world," Dominic replied. "And the closer someone stands to me, the less mercy it shows them." "Then stop standing so close," she said quietly. The words landed harder than she expected. Dominic stood abruptly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. He walked around the desk, stopping a few feet from her. The air between them felt charged, tight with everything unsaid. "You think this is easy for me?" he asked, his voice low. "Watching you walk through a world that would use you just to hurt me?" Lena met his gaze. "You don't own the fear that exists out there, and you don't get to make decisions for my life just because you're afraid." His expression flickered, the mask cracking for a fraction of a second. "Afraid," he repeated. "Yes," she said softly. "Not of them. Of yourself." Silence. She had said it now. The truth he had been circling but refusing to touch. Dominic's eyes searched her face, as if weighing whether to deny it or admit defeat. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I know," Lena replied. "That's the problem." That afternoon, Dominic canceled 3 meetings and shut himself in his office. Ryan noticed. "You're spiraling," Ryan said later, standing by the door with a file in hand. "That's not like you." Dominic didn't look up. "You think I don't know that she's not asking for protection?" Ryan continued carefully. "She's asking for honesty." Dominic's fingers tightened around the edge of his desk. "Honesty gets people killed, or it keeps them from walking blind into danger." That gave him pause. Ryan hesitated before adding, "Someone's been asking questions again. Quiet ones." Dominic's gaze snapped up. "About me. About her." The room went still. Who, Dominic asked. "Not someone you've crossed recently," Ryan said. "Which means they're testing you." Dominic stood, the decision already forming behind his eyes. "Increase her security." "But she can't know." Ryan sighed. That's not what she wants. It's what she'll get, Dominic said. For now. Lena felt the shift before she saw it. The car that followed her home that evening kept its distance. But she knew better now. She knew how to watch reflections in glass, how to sense patterns where others saw coincidence. Dominic was tightening the net. She hated how part of her felt relieved. She stopped at a small cafe near her apartment instead of going straight home, choosing a table near the window. She needed air, space, something that wasn't wrapped in his shadow. Lena. She looked up, startled. Noah Bennett stood there, hands tucked casually into his jacket pockets, surprise written across his face. Wow, didn't expect to see you here. Her first instinct was to glance outside. No black sedan, no obvious watchers. Hi, she said cautiously. What are you doing here, meeting a client nearby? He replied. Mind if I sit for a minute? She hesitated, then nodded. They talked lightly about work, about the weather, about nothing that mattered. It felt easy, harmless, normal, and yet tension coiled beneath her ribs. You seem distracted, Noah said gently. Everything okay? Lena considered lying. Instead, she shook her head. I don't think I'm built for normal right now. He smiled, not offended. Someone complicated. She didn't answer. Across the street, unseen by either of them, Dominic Hale watched through the tinted window of his car. His hands were clasped together, knuckles white. So this was how it would be. Lena laughing softly again, leaning toward someone else, choosing a world that didn't demand fear as the price of affection. Something cold twisted in his chest. Ryan shifted beside him. You want me to step in? No, Dominic said sharply. You're sure? Yes. His voice dropped. If she wants distance, she gets it. But he didn't leave. Later that night, Lena's phone rang. Dominic. She stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Yes, you were at the cafe on West 32nd, he said. She stiffened. You're watching me. I'm aware of where you are, he corrected. There's a difference. Is there? She asked quietly. A pause. You weren't alone. Her frustration flared. That's not your concern. Everything involving you is my concern. No, she replied. That's the illusion you're hiding behind. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Finally, Dominic spoke. Someone is testing my perimeter. Her breath caught. And you didn't think I should know that I thought you'd leave. Because you want me to, she said. Or because you're afraid I won't. Another pause. Lena, he said, softer now. I don't know how to keep you safe without losing you. Her chest tightened. Then stop choosing for me. She hung up before he could respond. That night, neither of them slept. Lena lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every look, every moment she had stood her ground and refused to retreat. She knew she was crossing a line, one drawn long before she ever walked into Dominic Hale's office. But she also knew this. If she stepped back now, she would always wonder who she could have been if she hadn't been afraid. Across the city, Dominic stood by the window of his penthouse, the lights of Manhattan stretching endlessly below. He had built his world on control, on anticipation, on eliminating variables before they became threats. Lena Carter was the one variable he could not remove. And for the first time, he understood the real danger wasn't that someone might take her from him. It was that she might walk away on her own, and he would have no one to blame but himself. The first headline appeared at dawn. Lena didn't see it immediately. She was still half asleep when her phone vibrated against the nightstand, the screen lighting up with a message from a number she didn't recognize. Are you okay? She frowned, blinking at the words. Before she could reply, another notification slid into place, then another. By the time she sat up in bed, her phone was buzzing steadily, a low, insistent hum that tightened something in her chest. She opened the first link someone sent her. A photo filled the screen. It was taken at the charity gala. Dominic had insisted she attend weeks ago, the one she had tried to refuse. The angle was intimate but not inappropriate. Dominic standing close beside her, his hand resting lightly at her waist as he leaned down to speak. Her face was turned toward him, lips parted in a smile that felt too honest to deny. The headline beneath it read, "Who is Dominic Hale's mysterious companion?" Lena's stomach dropped. She scrolled. Speculation, comments, assumptions layered over assumptions. Some guessed she was a socialite, others suggested a secret girlfriend. A few, too perceptive for comfort, used a different word: weakness. Her phone rang. This time she recognized the number. Dominic. She hesitated only a second before answering. "You saw it?" "Yes," he said. His voice was calm, but she knew him well enough now to hear what lived beneath it. Tension. Calculation. Restraint. "I didn't consent to this," she said. "Any of it." "I know." Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. "You should stay home today," Dominic said finally. Lena's jaw tightened. "That's not your decision. It's a recommendation," he replied. "One you should take seriously." She swung her legs off the bed and stood. "I'm not disappearing because someone decided to gossip." "This isn't gossip," he said quietly. "It's exposure. I won't live like I'm already guilty," she shot back. "And I won't let fear decide where I'm allowed to exist." Another pause. Then, softer, more dangerous. "You don't understand what happens when my world decides it's curious." Lena closed her eyes briefly. "Then explain it. Don't shelter me from it." When he spoke again, his voice had changed lower, controlled, distant. "I'll send a car." "No." A sharp inhale on the other end. "Lena, I'll get there myself," she said. "If you want me safe, start by trusting me." She hung up before he could argue. Dominic didn't go to the office that morning. He stood in his penthouse, phone pressed to his ear long after the call ended, staring at a city that had never felt more hostile. He had known this moment would come. Visibility always demanded payment. Ryan arrived 20 minutes later, tension etched into his features. "The chatter's spreading," he said. "Not mainstream yet. But the wrong people are watching." Dominic turned slowly. "Who competitors?" Ryan replied. "Old enemies. A few new ones. They're not interested in her because of romance. They're interested because she's close." Dominic's hands curled into fists. "Pull everything," Ryan nodded. "Already done. And there's more." He hesitated before continuing. "Someone tried to trace her address last night." The room went still. "Did they get it?" Dominic asked. "No," Ryan said. "We blocked it. But it means the message is out." Dominic closed his eyes briefly. Lena Carter was no longer a private citizen brushing against his world. She had entered the game. Lena felt it the moment she stepped into the building. The atmosphere had changed subtly, but unmistakably. Conversations quieted when she passed. Eyes lingered, some curious, some cautious. A few looked at her with something closer to calculation. She ignored them all and went straight to her desk. The black box waiting there made her stop short. It was unmarked. "Matt, simple." A note lay on top, written in Dominic's precise handwriting. "For your door, use it." Inside was a new security badge and a small, heavy key. Lena's throat tightened. Not flowers, not apologies. Protection. She closed the box and held it against her chest for a moment longer than necessary. When Dominic entered the floor, the shift was immediate. People straightened. Conversations died. He moved with the same authority he always had, but there was a new edge to it now. Sharper, more visible. His eyes found Lena instantly. They held for a fraction of a second. Then he looked away. He didn't call her into his office, didn't speak to her, didn't even pass her desk on his way in. The distance hurt more than she expected. By noon, the tension had become unbearable. Lena found Dominic in the conference room, reviewing reports with Ryan. She waited until Ryan excused himself before stepping inside. "You're shutting me out," she said without preamble. Dominic didn't look up. "I'm containing damage. I'm not damage," she replied sharply. His gaze lifted then, dark and intent. "Your leverage." The word cut deep. Lena drew a slow breath. "You don't get to reduce me to a strategic liability." "I don't want to," he said quietly. "But the world doesn't care what I want." She moved closer, standing across the table from him. "Then let me decide how visible I am." Dominic's jaw tightened. "This isn't a negotiation." "Everything is," she countered, "especially when it involves my life." He studied her for a long moment, the conflict written plainly across his face. "They will test boundaries," he said. "They always do. Small moves first. Watching. Probing." "And if I run?" Lena asked softly. "They'll chase," he answered, "because it confirms you matter." She nodded slowly. "Then hiding won't protect me." The realization seemed to strike him all at once. "No," he admitted, "it won't. It." That evening, the test came sooner than either of them expected. Lena was leaving the building when she noticed the envelope tucked beneath her windshield wiper. Plain, white, no name. Her pulse quickened. She didn't open it until she was safely inside her apartment. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You're closer than you think." No signature. No threat. That was worse. Her phone rang seconds later. "Dominic, I found something on my car," she said before he could speak. "Don't read it," he said sharply. "I already did." Silence. Then a curse, low and furious. "Did anyone see you?" he asked. "No. I'm coming over." "That's not I'm already on my way." Dominic arrived 20 minutes later, his presence filling the apartment the moment he stepped inside. He examined the envelope, the paper, the windows, the locks, his movements efficient, controlled, hiding the storm beneath. "They want to see how I react," he said. "And whether you panic." Lena crossed her arms. "I didn't." His eyes softened briefly. "I know." He turned to her then, really looked at her, as if recalibrating something internal. "This is what I meant," he said quietly, "when I said being close to me has consequences." "And this is what I meant," she replied, meeting his gaze, "when I said I won't be erased to make you comfortable." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Dominic did something unexpected. He stepped back. "You deserve a choice," he said. "Not an illusion of one." Lena's breath caught. "I can make this go away," he continued. "You leave, new job, new city. You disappear from my world." "And the other option?" she asked. "You stay," he said. "And you accept that my world will notice you." Her heart pounded. "Which one do you want?" Dominic hesitated just long enough to tell her the truth. "I want you safe," he said. "Even if that means without me." Lena stepped closer, closing the space he had created. "That's not an answer." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's the only honest one I have right now." Outside, the city hummed on, unaware that a line had been crossed. Lena Carter was no longer standing at the edge of Dominic Hale's world. She was visible, and someone, somewhere, had decided to see just how far that visibility could be pushed. The silence between them did not break when Dominic left her apartment. Lena stood by the door long after it closed, the echo of his presence still lingering in the air, his careful movements, the way his eyes had scanned every corner before finally resting on her. Heavy with things he hadn't said. "You deserve a choice." The words stayed with her, not because they were kind, but because they were incomplete. Dominic Hale had spent weeks controlling distance, information, and danger with surgical precision. Yet when it came to the truth, the part that mattered most, he had stopped just short of offering it. Lena understood something then, with sudden clarity. He wasn't afraid of what might happen to her. He was afraid of what she would choose if she knew everything. 2 days passed without incident. No new messages, no envelopes, no strange cars lingering too long outside her building. The calm felt artificial, like the pause before a storm decided where to strike. Lena returned to work as usual, refusing to shrink herself for rumors she hadn't invited. But she noticed changes Dominic couldn't fully hide. He took different routes through the building, canceled public appearances, moved meetings to private locations, and when he looked at her briefly, carefully, it was with something that looked dangerously close to regret. On the third night, Lena made her decision. She didn't call, didn't text, didn't ask permission. She went to him. Dominic's penthouse was quiet when she arrived. The guard at the entrance hesitated only a moment before letting her in. Lena suspected Dominic had already instructed them what to do if she appeared. The elevator ride up felt longer than it should have. When the doors opened, she stepped into a space defined by restraint-clean lines, dark surfaces, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The penthouse felt less like a home and more like a fortress built for one man and his thoughts. Dominic stood by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, a glass untouched in his hand. He turned the moment he sensed her. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I know," Lena replied. "That seems to be a pattern." He set the glass down slowly. "This isn't safe." "Then tell me why," she said. "Not in fragments, not in warnings." "The truth." His jaw tightened. "You won't like it. Try me." For a long moment, Dominic said nothing. The city lights reflected in the glass behind him, framing his silhouette in sharp lines and shadow. Then he spoke. "I wasn't born into this," he said quietly. "I chose it." Lena's breath stilled. "I grew up believing power meant protection." He continued, "That if I controlled enough, no one could take anything from me again." He turned toward her fully now, his expression stripped of the mask she knew so well. "I was wrong." She waited. "There was a man," Dominic said, "years ago. He wasn't an enemy. He was collateral." Lena's heart tightened. "He trusted me," Dominic went on, "believed I could protect him and his family if he helped me close a deal. When things went wrong, I had a choice." His voice dropped. "Save him, or save everything I had built." Lena felt a chill spread through her chest. "What did you choose?" Dominic held her gaze. "The Empire." The word fell heavy between them. "He died," Dominic said, "because I decided one life was acceptable loss." Lena swallowed hard. "And you've been paying for it ever since." "Yes." The admission was quiet, but it felt like a fracture opening beneath the floor. "That's why you don't want me close," Lena said slowly. "Not because I'm weak, because you're afraid you'll choose again." Something in Dominic's expression broke. "I won't," he said fiercely. "Not with you. But you don't trust yourself," she whispered. He looked away. They stood there, surrounded by the truth at last. Lena felt the weight of it, not just his past, but what it meant to love someone who had made choices like that and lived with them. "You think knowing this will make me leave?" she said. "I think it should," Dominic replied. She took a step closer. "You're not asking me to accept what you did. You're asking me to see you as you are now." He met her gaze, eyes dark. "And walk away while you still can." Lena shook her head. "That's not a choice. That's an escape." She reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope the one left on her car days earlier. She placed it on the counter between them. "This is what happens when you decide alone," she said. "You carry everything. You isolate. And you think that makes you strong." Dominic stared at the envelope like it might explode. "I don't need you to be clean," Lena continued softly. "I need you to be honest." He laughed once, bitter. "Honesty doesn't erase consequences." "No," she agreed, "but it lets me choose them with you." Silence fell again, but this time it felt different, less like a wall, more like a threshold. Dominic stepped closer, stopping just in front of her. If you stay, he said, you don't get ignorance. You don't get distance. You get the full weight of my world. Lena looked up at him, heart pounding. Then stop deciding what I can carry. His hand lifted, hesitated, then fell back to his side. I don't know how to love someone without destroying them. Her chest ached at the honesty in his voice. Then learn, she said. Or let me go for the right reasons. Not because you're afraid. Dominic closed his eyes briefly, as if steadying himself against something internal. When you walked into my office 2 years ago, he said quietly, you were supposed to be temporary, efficient, replaceable. She smiled faintly. I've never been very good at that. No, he agreed. You weren't. He opened his eyes again. If you stay, there will be a moment where I have to choose, and the world will be watching. Lena nodded. I know. And you might not like the man I have to be in that moment. She reached out then, gently taking his hand before he could stop her. His fingers curled around hers instinctively, as if the contact anchored him. I don't need a man who's perfect, she said. I need one who won't pretend his fear is love. His breath shuddered. For the first time since she had known him, Dominic Hale did not pull away. He leaned his forehead against hers, not kissing her, not claiming anything, just standing there, breathing her in like the truth had finally caught up to him. This changes everything, he murmured. Yes, Lena said softly. That's the point. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, but inside the penthouse, something had shifted irrevocably. Lena Carter now knew the worst of Dominic Hale, and she was still standing in front of him, which meant the next choice when it came would no longer be his alone. The next morning, Dominic Hale made a decision. It was not impulsive. It was not emotional. It was the kind of decision he had built his life on, quiet, calculated, executed before doubt could interfere. By the time Lena arrived at the office, the machine was already in motion. She sensed it immediately. Not in anything obvious. No alarms, no raised voices, but in the way the floor felt too orderly, too controlled. Her inbox held a calendar update she didn't remember approving. A meeting she usually attended had been reassigned. Her access badge flickered once before turning green. Restricted. Lena frowned. She stood and walked straight to Dominic's office. Ryan intercepted her halfway, his expression apologetic. He's in a call. I'll wait, Lena said. Ryan hesitated. He asked that you... She looked at him, calm but unyielding. Move! Ryan stepped aside. Lena pushed the door open. Dominic stood behind his desk, phone in hand. He glanced up, surprise flashing briefly across his face before he masked it. I'll call you back, he said into the phone and ended the call. The silence that followed was heavy. You're busy, Lena said. Yes, busy rearranging my life without telling me. His jaw tightened. This is exactly why I didn't want you involved. She stepped closer. Involved in what? Dominic. He walked around the desk, stopping a careful distance away. I've secured you a position in San Francisco. Private firm, good pay, clean records, no ties to me. Her breath caught. You did what it's temporary, he said. 6 months, maybe less. You decided this, she said slowly. Without me, I decided to keep you alive. The words were sharp, final. Lena stared at him, disbelief flickering into something colder. So this is it, she said. You tell me the truth just long enough to make me trust you, then you erase me. His expression tightened. I'm giving you a way out. No, she replied. You're taking control back because you didn't like the answer I might give. Dominic's voice dropped. You don't understand what's happening. I understand perfectly, Lena said. You're scared. He looked away. That was answer enough. The tension followed her all day. Lena completed her work mechanically, hands steady even as something inside her fractured. Dominic didn't speak to her again, didn't meet her eyes. When he passed her desk, He did so with deliberate distance, as if proximity itself were dangerous. By evening, she was exhausted from holding herself together. She packed her bag and headed for the elevator. The doors slid shut. Halfway down, the car jerked to a sudden stop. The lights flickered. Lena's pulse spiked. "Hello," she called. No response. Then movement. A soft scrape, metal against metal. The emergency phone crackled. Before she could reach it, the doors slid open abruptly. 2 men stood outside, not building security. She knew that instantly. "Lena Carter," one of them said, his tone polite in the way that never meant kindness. "Mr. Hale sends his apologies. We just want to talk." Her heart slammed against her ribs. "No," she said, backing away. "You don't—" The second man grabbed her wrist, everything blurred. Dominic felt it before the call came. That sharp, instinctive awareness that something had shifted. His phone rang once. "Ryan." "She's gone," Ryan said. Dominic's blood turned cold. "What do you mean? Gone elevator malfunction?" Cameras went dark for 40 seconds. Long enough. Dominic was already moving. The world narrowed to a single point of focus. Lena. Lena's head spun as they pushed her into the back of a car. The door slammed shut, plunging her into darkness. Her breath came fast, shallow. "You're making a mistake," she said, forcing calm into her voice. One of the men chuckled. "That's what everyone says." She clenched her fists. "Dominic will find you." "We know," the man replied. "That's the point." The car sped forward. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time lost its shape. Then the car slowed. The door opened. She was pulled out into a dim warehouse, the air cold and metallic. Her captors released her just enough to guide her forward. A third man waited inside, older, calm, watching her like she was a chess piece. "You're braver than I expected," he said. "Most women scream." Lena lifted her chin. "What do you want?" "A message delivered," he replied. "You're very important to Mr. Hale. We wanted to confirm that." Her stomach twisted. "You have," she said. "Now let me go." The man smiled thinly. Soon. Dominic arrived like a storm. The warehouse doors burst inward under the force of his men. Shouts echoed. Gunfire cracked the air, sharp and final. Lena dropped to the floor instinctively, hands over her head. Within minutes, it was over. Dominic crossed the room in long strides, his expression unreadable cold, lethal. He stopped in front of her, crouched, and cupped her face gently, his hands shaking just enough to betray him. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, breath hitching. "You came." "I always would," he said. The words were raw. He helped her stand, keeping her close as they exited the building. Later, in the quiet of his car, Lena finally broke the silence. "This is why," she said softly. "This is why you wanted me gone." "Yes," Dominic replied. She turned to him. "And it didn't work." His jaw tightened. "They took me because you tried to remove me," she continued. "Because you made it obvious I mattered." He looked at her then, eyes dark with guilt and something deeper. "I should have never let them see you." "You didn't," she said. "I chose to stand beside you." The car rolled to a stop outside her building. Dominic turned to her fully. "I can't do this again," he said. "I can't watch them put their hands on you. Then stop trying to protect me by pushing me away." Lena replied, "Because it won't save me. It'll just make me alone." Silence settled between them. Finally, Dominic spoke, his voice low and steady. "If you stay, there will be rules, real ones. No half-truths, no disappearing acts, and no decisions about my life without me," she said. He nodded once. "This world will come for you again," he warned. Lena met his gaze. "Then next time, we face it together." Something in Dominic shifted. He reached for her hand, holding it firmly this time, not tentative, not hesitant. "For the record," he said quietly, "I didn't send you away because you were a weakness." She waited. "I tried to send you away because you were the only thing I couldn't afford to lose." Lena's throat tightened. Outside, the city lights glimmered, indifferent as ever. But inside the car, a new line had been drawn. One Dominic Hale could no longer cross alone. And somewhere in the shadows, the people who had tested him now understood one thing clearly. Lena Carter was no longer just leverage. She was protected, and Dominic Hale was done pretending otherwise. The city learned to whisper again after that night. Not in headlines or rumors, those faded quickly, smothered by money and influence, but in the subtle ways power recognized itself. A few doors closed. A few alliances went silent. Certain names stopped appearing in conversations altogether. The message had been delivered. Dominic Hale was no longer tolerating tests. Lena felt the aftermath before she understood it. For the first time since she had been taken, she woke without the familiar tension coiled in her chest. No panic, no replaying footsteps in her mind. Only the quiet awareness of another presence nearby, steady, unyielding. Dominic sat in the chair across from her bed, jacket draped over the back, sleeves rolled, hands clasped loosely as if he had been there all night. She shifted slightly. His head lifted instantly. "You're awake," he said. She nodded, her throat dry. "How long have you been sitting there long enough?" he replied. Lena pushed herself up against the pillows. The movement made her wince not from pain, but from the memory that rushed back with sudden clarity. Cold concrete, hands gripping her arm. His voice cutting through the chaos when he found her. "You didn't have to stay," she said quietly. Dominic stood and crossed the room, stopping beside the bed. "I did." The certainty in his tone left no room for argument. She studied his face, the sharp lines, the faint shadows beneath his eyes. He looked tired in a way she had never seen before. Not physically, emotionally. "You haven't slept," she said. He didn't deny it. "Neither have you." She hesitated. "You killed someone." It wasn't an accusation. It was a truth. Dominic's gaze didn't flinch. "Yes," Lena let out a slow breath. "For me. For what they did," he corrected. "For what they planned to do." She watched him closely. "Does that distinction matter to you?" His jaw tightened. "It has to." She reached out before she could stop herself, her fingers brushing his wrist. He stilled at the contact, eyes dropping to where she touched him, as if recalibrating something internal. "I'm not afraid of you," she said softly. "I am," he replied. Her hand stilled. "Why?" "Because last night," he said quietly. I didn't hesitate. The admission hung between them, heavy and honest. I told myself I was capable of terrible things. Dominic continued. "But until now, I believed I could still choose when to be ruthless." His gaze lifted to hers. "When I saw you on that floor, all of that disappeared." Lena's heart tightened. "That doesn't make you dangerous to me," she said. "It makes me dangerous to anyone who gets close to you," he replied. Silence followed, not strained, but waited. Lena broke it first. "Then stop trying to send me away." He looked at her sharply. "You said there would be rules," she continued. "Real ones. This is mine." Dominic straightened slowly. "Say it. No more exits designed without my consent," she said. "No more decisions about my safety that exclude me. And no more pretending you don't feel what you feel." His expression flickered. "That last one might be the most dangerous," he said. She met his gaze without flinching. "Then stop pretending danger is something I haven't already accepted." By the end of the week, Dominic had done something no one expected. He pulled back, not publicly, not dramatically, but quietly, methodically. He began to dismantle pieces of his world that had once seemed immovable. A shipping route closed. A partnership dissolved. Money shifted through channels so clean it unsettled the people used to hiding behind it. Ryan noticed first. "You're shrinking the perimeter," he said carefully. "That makes you visible." Dominic didn't look up from the documents he was reviewing. "I already am." And when they realize why Dominic paused, then they'll understand my terms. Ryan hesitated. "You're choosing her." Dominic lifted his gaze. "I'm choosing to stop lying about what matters." Lena returned to work 2 weeks later. The building felt different, not hostile, but alert. People watched her with new eyes now, not just as Dominic Hale's assistant, but as something else they hadn't fully defined yet. She didn't care. Dominic met her at the elevator. No distance. No silence. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she replied, surprised by the ease of it. They walked together down the hallway, their steps falling into an unspoken rhythm. When they reached her desk, he stopped. "Lunch," he said. "You'll eat." She raised an eyebrow. That wasn't a question. "No," he agreed, yet. She smiled despite herself. As he turned to leave, she reached out and caught his hand briefly. He stopped instantly, the contact grounding them both. "You don't have to become someone else for me," she said quietly. "I know," he replied. "But I have to become someone I can live with." The second test came quietly. No kidnapping, no weapons, just information. An anonymous file landed in Lena's inbox late one evening. She almost deleted it until she saw Dominic's name in the subject line. She opened it. Financial records, dates, names she recognized from whispered conversations. And at the center of it all, Dominic Hale. But not as he was now, as he had been. She read in silence, her chest tightening with every page. It was all there, the choices, the consequences, the lives affected by decisions he had once made without hesitation. When she finished, she didn't cry. She went to him. Dominic knew the moment she walked in. He saw it in her eyes. "You saw it," he said. "Yes." He waited. "Is it all true?" she asked. "Yes." "Then why didn't you tell me everything she demanded?" "Because I didn't want you to look at me the way I look at myself," he replied. She stared at him, emotions warring in her chest. "Do you regret it?" His answer came without hesitation. "Every day?" Her voice softened. "Do you regret becoming who you are now?" "No." She nodded slowly. "Then don't let them decide which version of you defines us." Something in Dominic's expression shifted relief. Maybe. Or something close to it. "They want you to doubt me," he said. "They want you to doubt yourself," she corrected. She stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "I see you. All of it. And I'm still here." Dominic closed his eyes briefly, resting his forehead against hers. "This is the last time," he said quietly. "The last time anyone uses you to reach me." She believed him. That night, Dominic did not return to the penthouse. He stayed with Lena, not as a bodyguard, not as a shadow, but as a man who no longer wanted distance between himself and the person who had already crossed every boundary he'd built. They sat on the couch in silence, the city glowing outside the window. He didn't touch her at first, neither did she. When he finally reached for her hand, it was slow, deliberate, as if asking permission with the gesture alone. She laced her fingers through his. "This doesn't erase what you are," she said softly. "I know. It doesn't make things simple, I know, and it will get worse before it gets better." He met her gaze. "I'm done running." She smiled faintly. "Good. I was getting tired of chasing you." For the first time since he had seen her laughing with another man in that restaurant. Dominic Hale felt something unfamiliar settle into his chest. Not control, not fear, but resolve. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the city lights, the people watching him began to understand something dangerous. Dominic Hale had stopped protecting his weakness. He had started protecting his choice. Dominic Hale had always understood one immutable rule of power. When you change the rules, someone bleeds. He just hadn't expected the price to be so personal. The first consequence arrived quietly, disguised as courtesy. An invitation, cream-colored cardstock, heavy paper, no return address. The kind of thing that suggested influence rather than threat. It appeared on Dominic's desk one morning without passing through security, which alone made Ryan stiffen. A private dinner. Ryan said, scanning it once, hosted by people who don't usually invite. Dominic didn't need to ask who. He recognized the tone, the implication. They had noticed. Lena stood by the window of his office, watching the city below. She didn't turn around. "You're not going alone." It wasn't a question. Dominic studied her profile, the calm in her posture, the quiet certainty in her voice. Weeks ago, he would have refused. He would have constructed a dozen reasons why this was safer, smarter, necessary. Now he only said, "It won't be friendly." She nodded. "Neither am I." The restaurant sat above the city, hidden behind layers of exclusivity and silence. No sign, no valet. Just a private elevator that opened into a room washed in low light and restrained luxury. 4 men waited inside. Men Dominic had crossed paths with before. Men who measured loyalty in profit and consequences in blood. Their smiles were polite. Their eyes were not. "Dominic Hale," one of them said warmly. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," Dominic replied. Lena felt the subtle shift beside her, his body angling just enough to place himself between her and the table. Not possessive, protective. She rested her hand lightly against his arm. It steadied him more than he wanted to admit. Dinner progressed with careful conversation, compliments wrapped in warnings, nostalgia edged with accusation. "You've been quieter lately," another man observed casually. "Smaller footprint." "That's unexpected." "I'm streamlining," Dominic said. "Efficiency has its merits." "Efficiency can look like weakness," the man replied smoothly. Lena met his gaze. Or confidence? The table stilled. Dominic turned to her, surprised. Then something like pride flickered in his eyes before he masked it. "Your companion is bold," the first man said. "Visible." The word landed exactly where it was meant to. Dominic's tone sharpened. "Careful." The man smiled thinly. "You brought her into the light." "Dominic, you know what that means." "Yes," Dominic said calmly. "It means you don't touch her." A pause. Then laughter soft, measured. Still the same. Someone murmured, "You always did have a sense of ownership." Lena's fingers tightened around Dominic's arm. "That's not what this is." All eyes turned to her. She held their gaze, heart steady despite the quiet tension. "You think proximity makes me leverage?" "It doesn't. It makes your assumptions outdated." Silence followed. Dominic inhaled slowly. "Dinner is over," he said. They didn't speak until they were back in the car. The city slid past in streaks of light, distant and unconcerned. Lena watched Dominic's reflection in the window, the tension etched into the line of his jaw. "You didn't have to say any of that," he said finally. "Yes," she replied softly. "I did." He turned to her. "They will come back harder, I know, and they won't separate business from you." "I know," she repeated. "But I won't be the reason you shrink yourself." His expression tightened. "That's exactly what scares me." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "You're not shrinking. You're choosing." Dominic closed his eyes briefly, holding her hand like it was the only thing anchoring him to the present. The next blow didn't come from his enemies. It came from within. A senior partner, one of Dominic's longest-standing allies, pulled out of a joint venture without warning. Funds froze. Contracts stalled. The ripple effect was immediate and deliberate. Ryan didn't bother softening the report. "They're isolating you." Dominic nodded once. "Let them. And if they don't stop, they will," he replied. "Or they'll force my hand." Lena listened from the doorway, unease settling in her chest. "What does that mean?" Dominic turned to her. "It means I can't keep one foot in this world anymore." The words hung in the air. "You don't have to burn everything down," she said carefully. "No," he agreed, "but I have to choose which parts I'm willing to sacrifice." "And if the cost is too high?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low and honest. "Then I'll pay it." The attack came 3 nights later. Not loud, not violent, calculated. Lena returned home to find her apartment door ajar. Her breath caught. She didn't step inside. She called Dominic. He arrived within minutes, his presence sharp and controlled. He swept the apartment methodically, eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. Nothing was taken. Nothing was broken. Nothing was moved. "They wanted you to notice," Dominic said grimly. Lena leaned against the counter, pulse racing. "They're escalating." "Yes." She met his gaze. "So are you." He stepped closer. "This ends one of 2 ways." "Say it." "I walk away completely," he said. "Or I make an example." Lena's heart pounded. "And which one keeps us safe?" Dominic's voice dropped. "Neither. But one gives us a future." She took his hands, forcing him to look at her. "I won't be the excuse you use to become someone you don't want to be again. And I won't let you be the reason they win," he replied. They stood there, caught between 2 impossible truths. Finally, Lena spoke. "If you choose to leave that world, you can't half leave, I know. And if you choose to fight it, I lose parts of myself I may never get back." She nodded slowly. "Then choose knowing I'm still here, not as leverage, not as a weakness, as what he asked." She smiled faintly. "As the reason you stop pretending this is just business?" Something in Dominic's expression softened. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her tightly, not desperate, not possessive, but resolute, as if the decision had already been made somewhere deep inside him. The following morning, Dominic Hale made his move. He called a meeting no one expected. Partners, rivals, observers. And he stood before them, not as a man hiding his vulnerability, but as one who had decided what he was willing to lose. Lena watched from the edge of the room, heart pounding as Dominic spoke with calm authority. "I'm restructuring," he said simply, "effective immediately." Whispers rippled. "You're stepping back," someone scoffed. "No," Dominic replied. "I'm stepping forward. Just not where you expect." He didn't look at Lena, but he didn't have to. She felt the shift the moment it happened. Dominic Hale had stopped reacting. He had started defining. And as the room filled with quiet, dangerous understanding, one truth became clear to everyone watching. Lena Carter was no longer standing beside a powerful man. She was standing beside a man who had decided what power was worth keeping, and the world would not forgive him easily for that. The city noticed the change before it understood it. Dominic Hale did not disappear. That was what unsettled people most. He didn't flee, didn't hide, didn't retreat into silence. Instead, he became deliberate selective about where he appeared, precise about what he allowed the world to see. And when he was seen, Lena was with him, not behind him, not in his shadow, beside him. At first, it was subtle, a brief appearance at a private fundraiser, a quiet entrance into a closed-door meeting where eyes followed her more than him. Whispers moved through rooms like smoke. Is that her? The assistant? The one he changed everything for Lena felt it all, the weight of attention pressing against her skin. But she didn't shrink. She had chosen this visibility, knowing it would cost her the luxury of anonymity. Dominic noticed. He noticed the way she kept her shoulders straight when people stared, the way she met curious gazes without challenge or apology, the way she never once asked him to shield her from the consequences of his world. That steadiness grounded him. "You don't have to come to everything," he told her one evening as they prepared to leave his penthouse. Lena adjusted the cuff of her jacket, meeting his eyes in the mirror. I know. Some of this is meant to be uncomfortable, he added. On purpose. She smiled faintly. Then let it be uncomfortable together. He said nothing after that. He didn't need to. The first open challenge came disguised as courtesy. A public appearance unavoidable, highly visible. Cameras, donors, executives who smiled with their mouths and calculated with their eyes. Dominic stood at the podium, calm and measured, his presence commanding the room without effort. Lena remained a few steps away, listening, watching. Then someone asked the question. It wasn't aggressive. It was almost playful. Mr. Hale, a man near the front said, "There's been quite a bit of interest lately in your personal life. Should we expect any changes to how you conduct business?" A ripple of amusement passed through the crowd. Lena felt the shift instantly. She glanced at Dominic. He didn't hesitate. "My business," he said evenly, "has always been conducted with transparency where it matters. And where doesn't it?" the man pressed. Dominic's gaze moved slowly, deliberately to Lena. "Where it doesn't," he said, "is no longer up for speculation." The room fell quiet. Lena's breath caught not from fear, but from the weight of what he'd just done. He hadn't named her. He hadn't needed to. From that moment on, the lines were clear. Later that night, alone in his car, Lena broke the silence. "You didn't have to do that," she said. Dominic glanced at her. "Yes, I did. You made me visible in a way I can't undo." "I know," he replied. "And I won't pretend that doesn't come with risk." She studied him carefully. "Then why?" He took a breath, slower than usual, because hiding you would have been easier. The honesty of it stunned her. "And because," he continued, "I'm done choosing easy over right." Lena reached for his hand, squeezing once. "I don't need grand gestures." "I know," he said softly. "That wasn't for you." She understood then. That was for them. The retaliation was swift. A deal collapsed overnight. An account froze without explanation. A supplier pulled out of a contract that had been signed in good faith weeks earlier. Ryan delivered the reports with grim efficiency. "They're pressuring you to reverse course." Dominic scanned the documents. Unbothered. Let them. "And if they escalate, they will," Dominic said calmly. Lena listened from the corner of the room, the weight of his certainty settling uneasily in her chest. When Ryan left, she stepped closer. "This isn't just business anymore," she said. "No," Dominic agreed. "It hasn't been for a while." She hesitated. "If you need me to step back?" "No," he said immediately. She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't say step away," she clarified. "I said step back. There's a difference." Dominic considered her words carefully. "And what would stepping back look like to you?" She met his gaze. "It would look like me choosing when to stand beside you, not because you need proof, and not because others demand it." He nodded slowly. "Fair." Then, after a pause, "But know this when you stand with me. It won't be silent anymore." She smiled faintly. It hasn't been silent for a long time. The tension reached its breaking point on a rain-soaked evening when Dominic didn't come home. Lena waited longer than usual, unease creeping in despite her efforts to remain calm. She tried calling him once. Then again, no answer. Just as she was about to call Ryan, the door opened. Dominic stepped inside, soaked, his jacket hanging loosely from one hand. His expression was closed off, his movements precise. "Where were you?" Lena asked quietly. He set the jacket down slowly, handling something. That's not an answer. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his eyes softened. They made their move. Her heart tightened. What kind of move one meant to test how far I'd go to keep you out of it? She stepped closer. And I refused," he said, "which cost me more than they expected." She searched his face. "Did anyone get hurt?" He replied, "But they wanted me to think someone could have." Silence fell between them. Lena reached for his hands, cold from the rain. "You don't have to prove anything." "I know," he said, "but I needed to be sure." "Of what?" "That choosing you wouldn't make me hesitate when it mattered." Her breath caught. "And did it?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "No." Relief and fear collided in her chest. That night, they sat together on the couch, the city's glow reflecting off the windows. No words, no explanations, just presence. Dominic broke the silence first. "I won't ask you to promise anything." Lena leaned into his shoulder. "Good. I don't give promises lightly." He smiled faintly. "I've noticed." He hesitated, then added, "But I will tell you this: everything I do from this point on will be done with the knowledge that the world is watching." She looked up at him. "And you're okay with that, no?" he said honestly. "But I'm willing." Lena rested her head back against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "You realize," she murmured, "that loving you isn't quiet." "I never wanted it to be," he replied. Outside, the rain softened, the city settling into a restless calm. Somewhere beyond the reach of their windows, decisions were being made, lines were being drawn. The cost of standing in the light was still being tallied. But for the first time, Lena felt certain of one thing. This wasn't a temporary defiance. It wasn't a reaction. It wasn't a phase. What she and Dominic had stepped into was irreversible. Love, once exposed, was no longer just a feeling. It was a declaration, and the world would have to decide how to answer it. The last battle was not loud. There were no sirens, no gunshots tearing through the night, no dramatic confrontation beneath flickering lights. Dominic Hale had learned long ago that the most permanent endings were quiet ones, signed, transferred, dissolved behind closed doors where power quietly rearranged itself. By the time the city realized something fundamental had changed, it was already done. The old network fractured. The silent alliances dissolved. The shadows that once fed on Dominic's reach no longer found purchase. He did not destroy the world that made him. He outgrew it. And in doing so, he made it irrelevant. Lena felt the shift one morning while standing in his kitchen, sunlight spilling across the marble floor. Dominic stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, listening rather than commanding. When he hung up, he exhaled slow, steady, like someone setting down a weight he had carried for far too long. "That was the last one," he said. She turned to him. The last tie that mattered. He replied, "Clean exit, no debts, no leverage." She studied his face carefully. "How do you feel?" Dominic considered the question longer than usual. "Lighter," he said finally, "and terrified." She smiled softly. "That sounds healthy." He laughed under his breath, a real laugh, unguarded and quiet. "I don't know what comes next." Lena crossed the room and stood in front of him. "Neither do I." His hands settled on her waist instinctively, familiar and grounding. "Are you afraid?" She thought about it, about the chaos they had survived, about the world that had tried to pull them apart, about the man in front of her who had once ruled fear and now chose vulnerability. "Yes," she said honestly, "but not enough to walk away." Dominic leaned his forehead against hers. "Good, because I don't think I could survive that." The announcement came a week later. No press conference, no spectacle, just a carefully worded statement released through the appropriate channels. Dominic Hale was stepping away from executive control of his holdings, transferring leadership to a trust board with strict oversight. He would remain a consultant, nothing more. Speculation exploded. Some called it a strategic retreat. Others called it surrender. A few called it love. Lena didn't read the articles. She watched Dominic instead, how he slept through the night now, how his shoulders relaxed without the constant vigilance, how he learned, slowly, awkwardly, to exist without calculating every possible threat. He still noticed everything, He just didn't let it consume him. The ring appeared on an ordinary afternoon. No event, no witnesses. They were sitting on the balcony, the city humming below them in the late afternoon heat. Lena was reading, her feet tucked beneath her, when Dominic stood abruptly. She looked up. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," he said, then paused. "Everything." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple box. No logos, no extravagance. Lena's breath caught, but she didn't reach for it. Dominic knelt, not because he needed tradition, but because he needed her to understand the gravity of the moment. "I won't promise you a quiet life," he said. "I don't know how to offer something I've never lived." Lena's eyes burned. "I won't promise you safety without cost," he continued, "or certainty, or ease." He opened the box. Inside was a ring unlike anything the world expected from Dominic Hale Elegant, understated, chosen with care rather than status. "But I promise you this," he said, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "I will never again choose power over you. I will never hide you. And I will never make a decision about our life without your voice in it." Lena set her book aside slowly. "And if one day," Dominic added softly, "you decide this life isn't for you, I will let you go without turning you into a regret." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she realized they had formed. "You're asking?" she whispered. "Yes," he replied, not commanding, not assuming. She stood and pulled him up before he could say another word, her hands cupping his face. "Yes," she said, "I choose you." The ring slid onto her finger, fitting perfectly as if it had been waiting for her all along. Dominic exhaled like a man finally allowed to breathe. They didn't rush the future. They learned it. Lena moved out of her apartment not because she was pressured, but because she wanted to wake up beside him. Dominic learned to share space without guarding it. They argued sometimes real arguments, not power struggles. They compromised. They laughed. They healed. The wedding was small, private, no press, no spectacle, just people who mattered. Ryan stood nearby, smiling like someone who had lived through too much history not to appreciate the ending. When Lena walked toward Dominic, sunlight catching in her hair, he forgot how to breathe, not because she was beautiful though she was, but because she was walking toward him freely. By choice. When they exchanged vows, Dominic didn't promise forever. He promised today, and tomorrow. And the work of choosing each other again and again, Lena promised truth, and courage, and the willingness to walk away if either of them stopped being honest. It was the strongest commitment either of them had ever known. Years later, the city barely remembered the man Dominic Hale had once been. They knew him now as a quiet force behind ethical investments, as a donor who never attached his name, as a man who walked hand in hand with his wife through streets that once feared him. Lena kept her own career, built her own reputation. She was never absorbed into his shadow. Sometimes, when they passed the restaurant where it had all begun, Dominic would glance at her with a faint smile. "Do you ever think about that night," he asked once, "the one where you almost destroyed the city because you were jealous?" She teased. He smirked. "That's not how I remember it." "How do you remember it?" He looked at her, eyes warm and certain. "The night I realized I didn't want to rule the world." She squeezed his hand. "Good. The world is exhausting." They walked on, blending into the rhythm of the city, not untouchable, not hidden, just real. And for the first time in his life, Dominic Hale understood something simple and profound. Love hadn't weakened him. It hadn't undone him. It had taught him what was finally worth keeping. Happily, ever, after,